Welcome to Talkin to America. I'm your host, Aaron Zelman. Our special guest today is Len Savage, coming back for, I think, his third interview. And today we're going to be talking about some court cases dealing with the gun issue that the ATF would rather you not know about, and also about some of the most recent vindictiveness of the ATF towards Len and others, and a little bit about their sloppy record keeping. Len, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Welcome to Talkin to America. Where would you like to start?
Well, let's pick up with the gang and go from there, because there's some things that we couldn't go into any great detail on the gang because there was so much information. And by the way, what a wonderful job you did.
We should just mention to people the gang is a documentary film, and it deals with the abuses and the criminality of the ATF, and you were one of the stars in it. Go ahead.
Well, in the gang we talked about how after a court case, US v. Wren, that the ATF reconsidered a couple of my products, and by reclassification, which is a handy little tool they have to lean on people like me who exercise their right to free speech. What wasn't talked about the gang was that I had a phone call with the gentleman, Mr. Nixon, that we discussed in the gang, but what wasn't said is that we had a phone call right after the Wren trial where I was in no uncertain terms warned not to post on the Internet or speak to members of Congress and to be silent, or else they were reconsidering my products. And then they followed through with those threats, obviously. And I was later threatened with legal action the following August. I got a letter from the ATF demanding a customer list, or else I would be compelled. I was a little worried at what being compelled would entail, given how they compelled the people at Ruby Ridge and at Waco. And it was a very dark time for me, but I'm glad I was able to work my way through it.
And before we go too far, I would like you to explain to people what the reconsideration process was about and what it meant to you financially.
Sure, I'd be happy to. My company designed a product called the BM3000. It's a caliber conversion device for a legally and lawfully owned machine gun. And prior to the Wren case, I had a letter from the ATF telling me that it was neither a firearm nor a machine gun, and we ramped up for production. And after the Wren case, I got the warning call that if I didn't sit down and shut up, I was going to get the treatment. And what happened was that they wrote me a letter, said, we changed our mind, this is illegal. You didn't make any of those, did you? After 10 months of production. And it cost me right around $500,000 by the time it was all said and done with the canceled contracts, the sales that I had already started taking orders on. And it was devastating to my company.
You can comment a little bit about the Wren trial itself, since it's over with, and what went on there that made the ATF so angry with you.
Well, I was present, and I was acting in the capacity of a technical advisor for the defense in Wren, and what a circus. I was sickened by what I experienced and what I saw. Just to give you an example, one evening after court was adjourned and the judge walked out of the courtroom, a local ATF agent walked over to me and threatened me with arrest right there in front of U.S. Marshals, that if I touched my property before he got his evidence out of the room, he was going to put me in jail. And I was asking him, gee, I didn't know you had authority in a federal courthouse. You don't look like a U.S. Marshal. And then he made a comment, well, you better move because I would hate to accidentally butt stroke you as I'm loading my evidence. Things started to get pretty heated. We were separated by U.S. Marshals. Nothing happened. No accountability. Openly threatening somebody on a defense team, and they would nobody would do anything. I was just absolutely sickened. And one of the other things that happened in the middle of this mess, Ren was not going to get a fair trial. It was pretty obvious to me. And with threatening me with arrest and threatening me with physical harm, Ren was a wreck. And for all intents and purposes, he had an emotional breakdown right then and there. The U.S. attorney, when there was discussions of whether or not they were going to allow me to testify to the truth in the court, offered a deal to Mr. Ren that if he would plead guilty to a lesser charge, they wouldn't put him in prison. They'd give him probation. While I was waiting out in the hall and all this was being sorted out, the U.S. attorney walked up to me and was fixing to tell me something, and his cell phone rang. And for what it's worth, only U.S. attorneys and federal agents can have cell phones in that particular federal courthouse. I wasn't allowed, nor was defense attorneys allowed to have their cell phone. And he gets a call, and after he hangs up, he says, "That was the Attorney General of the United States, Alberto Gonzales, and he just threatened me with my job for giving your buddy a deal," and stormed off, extremely angry. And I was shocked. Why would the Attorney General of the United States care about this little old case in South Carolina? I walked away from that very disillusioned, my eyes wide open at just how mean, how nasty, and how unfair the system is stacked against somebody when the ATF targets you.
In the film The Gang, we have a short piece of film. It was done by a surveillance camera in Ernie Ren's shop. The auditor, who admits that there's about 140 machine guns that are unaccounted for, or something to that effect.
I'm very familiar with that clip. That was...
I should clarify, unaccounted for by the U.S. government on its registry, not by Ernie Ren.
Yeah, that's correct. And I'm real familiar with it. As a matter of fact, he testified in that trial that the government's records were incomplete under oath. And this record is what they hold up when they prosecute somebody and say, this person's got a machine gun, it's unregistered, therefore they're guilty of violating the law. Well, what does this say to the legitimacy of the evidence if the government's own books aren't right?
I believe you had a recent experience with this.
Oh, yes, sir. It had to do when I got audited. I was shocked and alarmed to find out that the government had lost track of 4 machine guns in my inventory. Now, mind you, I had all of my records complete. I had letterhead from the ATF that showed they were properly registered and that I had followed the law. But they had lost track of them. And what's even scarier is they have a worksheet to figure this out, that their records are so bad, so incomplete, that when they do an audit, they have a worksheet to help fix their records with our records, as in industry records. And they're using our records to try to fill in the holes in theirs. And it's obscene because, again, it questions the legitimacy of any time they present that as evidence in a court of law.
You know, this raises an interesting issue that we both have been involved with. There's a firearms dealer in Twin Falls, Idaho. His name is Ryan Horsley. The name of his store, the 80-year-old family store, is Red's Trading Post. And he has had a run-in with the ATF. And apparently when the final measurement is taken of his record keeping, if I can put it that way, there seems to be a 0.4% error on trivial things. And yet they're trying to destroy him and put him out of business. I guess this is a good example of how arbitrary the government is and just how dishonest they are.
And I don't think that the entire government's dishonest, but I can tell you that time and time again, I've seen the ATF, if not outright lying, trying to slant things in a positive light when it's not true. Their records are abominable, and that's the best way I can put it. That if they screw up on a regular basis,